All right, we are live. It is April 28th, 2020, and Anthony Milcari and I have got Phil Cordell of Hilton to talk all about their brand new cleaning initiatives. We have Cindy Estes Green of Calibri Labs giving us all that data we need to know. Del Ross of Hotel Effectiveness, Ken Patel. Oh my God, Chris Green. What a show this is going to be, guys. You got to stick around. It's going to be something. It'll be something. To rock and roll, and we are glad that you've arrived. Anthony Milcari, really great to see you today. I'm feeling like, wow, this is going to be just a barn burner of a show, man.
I got a question for you. Why do you do the prices right? Come on down at the beginning of the show.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do that. All right.
No, don't do that, please.
No, too late. Cindy Estes Green, come on down. You're the next contestant on whatever the heck we're calling our daily show. Thank you so much for being here. Also, let's bring in Mr. Del Ross of Hotel Effectiveness. And returning once again, another triumphant Tuesday. Right. Chris Green of Chesapeake Hospitality, who's been joining us twice every single week. Guys, we love that you are all here. And for all of you out there watching and listening, please share this feed. Send it to everybody you know out there because we're building a great audience. We've got a great community, and Cindy's about to blow us away with some incredible data that you need to know.
So Glenn, first of all, stay away from the coffee.
STFU, right?
bring it down just about 20% because a lot of people are just kind of waking up because everybody's getting up late these days. So Cindy, as I said to you off camera, I've been in this business 30 years, and when you started writing all your comprehensive data about revenue management and just all the statistics, you were the first person I really looked at and admired. So you were the first rock star in this business to me. So did I get to meet you today? At all these years that we've not been in a conference together, or I have not met you in person, is shocking. But I've admired you for a very, very long time.
Thank you so much.
I've admired you for a long time, plus a day. Just so, I just want to put that out there. So we've got Del, we've got Chris, we've got Cindy, but it's important, Cindy. You are the woman that's been collecting amazing data. Curious to hear from you about what you're seeing out there currently, and maybe give us a little perspective about your company and why this data is so relevant and important in 2020.
Sure. So my name is Cindy Estes Green. I'm the CEO of Calibri Labs. We're a next generation benchmarking and data analytics company. So we gather data from over 35,000 hotels in the US. We get all of the transactions without any of the personally identifiable information, but we get every booking. So we have all the revenue, we have the rate categories, the channels, and we know all the cost of acquisition. So we can not only report on RevPAR, we can report on net RevPAR. And we have it all by rate category. So we know by corporate and government and group and rack bar and, consortia and AAA. I mean, down to
But you lived this for your whole career. So tell a little bit just about your background so people know that, you've lived this data. I mean,
but before you say that, I just want to point out that Phil Cordell with Hilton will be here at 12:45. So audience, just stick around and back to you, Cindy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been over 30 years. I've run hotels for Hilton International. I've been in the corporate office for Hilton International in a brand role. I've also had a company called Driving Revenue that was a predictive modeling analytics company. And now with Calibri Labs, we've been in the market just the last couple of years, but we spent over 5 years building the database that we have. We're trying to do next generation kind of analytics because the world's changed. So we have to change with it.
So we've been talking ad nauseum for the last 6 weeks about, what's happened. What does today look like? What does yesterday look like? What does 90 days look like to you? Like, where do you see our market, the American market? We talked to international markets yesterday, but where do you see in 90 days people will be across the country? On an average rate basis? I know that's a really hard question, a really broad question, but just give us some, because I think people are tired of listening to what happened yesterday and more like, okay, how do I open my hotel and what should I expect?
Yeah, good question. So we have a dashboard, which I think was put up on the site for anybody, calibrilabs.com, industry health, which anyone can look at, and we update weekly. So we've been tracking really closely what's going on. And what we've seen is the average rate so far up until last Friday, which is we track it and update it weekly, have been running, the best case is government business, which is only about 20% below 2019 numbers, which makes sense because of the per diem rates, all the way up to about a 45% drop from previous levels. And this has been tracking pretty steadily for the last few weeks, but it's actually gotten a little bit better, believe it or not. I mean, I think some hotels are starting, there's the beginnings, the kind of green shoots and the beginnings of business coming back. From an occupancy point of view, we're still running, best case is about 65% down from last year to about 90% down. And that's in rack bar, actually, which is kind of a good sign, but that's pretty much where the business is. So in total, we're running on average rate about 40% down, and in occupancy between 75 and 80% down. But we also track number of closed hotels because unfortunately many hotels had to close. So we've got the latest numbers for closings, and we track just those that are closed completely, as in they're not partially open, there's not one floor open, they haven't leased the whole thing out for healthcare workers. About 17% of the hotel rooms in the US right now are completely closed. That means they have no inventory on the OTA sites, they have no inventory on their own website, and they are not reporting revenue or room nights to us. 100% closed, 17% of the rooms, that's about 5,500 properties.
And as much as that sounds like a lot, 17% is actually a number that I'm surprised by. I thought it would be more than
I thought it was much higher than that.
Especially at this point. So I think from maybe banks working with people, salespeople being able to get that business that from the government, I think that's kind of kept that number better than I anticipated. Chris, is that a number you anticipated, or is that what you kind of thought?
Well, I mean, Cindy's, their data is great. What you have is a whole lot of hotels that are effectively closed out there. So, I mean, in our portfolio, we have about 10% that are closed, but then we have another 30% that are effectively closed that have 15 or 21 rooms available, skeleton crew. We're not actively marketing the hotel because we don't want additional stays, but just because of either leasehold agreements with other tenants or other things that are factors in the hotel, we're keeping it open. So
we think it's probably triple this number when you add what Chris just mentioned. So we are talking about 100% proven closed. You probably can triple that to look at those that are effectively closed.
Right. So what I'm seeing out there, I've got a couple of press releases that I received this morning, and anyone can check them out at novacancynews.com. But the Global Business Travel Association's Chief Executive Officer, Scott Solembrino, says, though travel remains at a standstill, we're beginning to see the light at the end of this very long tunnel. And the majority of GBTA member companies, now these are all the folks that are filling your hotels with business travel, expect domestic business travel to resume within the next 2 to 3 months, and most expect employees will be willing to travel. That is really good news to me. Del, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we're seeing some similar numbers. It certainly differs by market and by chain scale. As you know, we've got data from about 4,500 hotels that use us for labor management, labor cost controls, and we get all their revenue data, which generally drives the staffing models. So we're tracking both the staffing activity as well as the business activity, and generally it tracks what Cindy described. Got some good news earlier today, though. One of the management companies that we work with that had shut down all of their hotels let us know today that they're going to be reopening those hotels in the next 2 weeks, which is really nice. Basically, I think that hotels they recognize we've hit the bottom. We're kind of hovering at the bottom right now. And the panic of the initial couple weeks of, from mid-March through a couple weeks ago, it's teetered over into pre-recovery planning. We call it the pre-covery stage. And people are thinking about this now, and it's a sign of hope.
Now, do you think that's got less to do with the wanting to get back to business, or more to do with the PPP plan that you have to employ 75% of your employees?
It's a combination, because what we are seeing is occupancy has been fairly stable at its very awful level. We see about 17% thereabouts, but in certain markets we're seeing some pickup, and we don't think it's related just to healthcare. and alternative uses, we think it is in fact genuine business. We don't get the full segment data that Cindy would get, but we do get a lot of good data, and certain markets are seeing some really strong gains. Not surprisingly, Florida beach markets that opened this weekend saw a pretty substantial pickup in their occupancy. We have several hotels in Jacksonville that reported near sold out conditions. I'm not sure if health-wise that's a great move, but from health of the industry standpoint, it's a bright light in the darkness.
So speaking of Jacksonville, Chris Green, who lives in Jacksonville.
I do live in Jacksonville, and I can't say everybody made the best decisions that I saw. I did not go to the beaches this weekend. I stayed in my house like a good citizen. I wanted to go back to one thing Cindy said that I thought was fascinating, is because of the data she gets, and you see how far rate is down. It's to me, it's artificially suppressed, and I think Cindy can probably model that out too with her technology. But it's suppressed because of the segments that are traveling, right? So we don't know what the true bottom is on the IBT or business travel guests because they're not traveling. So that's just out of the market. So all you're getting is government and some social and discount, right, Cindy? So
yeah, but we're seeing, I mean, I think that we're going to see some of the leisure. Everyone's expecting leisure to come back first. That's not going to be surprising. But the other thing that we expect, because we've looked at by chain scale and we've looked at secondary and tertiary markets. I mean, we've got it pretty, tracking it at a pretty micro level. And some of the, the highway hotels, the secondary, tertiary market, mid-market kind of hotels are okay. I mean, they're not great, but they're okay. I mean, just like it's been reported before, extended stay normally would be doing 80 or 85%, and they're down to 50, but 50 sounds pretty good right now.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to see a very uneven recovery. So, to the original question Anthony asked about the next 90 days, it will start picking up. It's not going to get worse than it is, but the recovery will be uneven in terms of the nature of the business that comes back. And I think some of the local corporate business and the regional corporate business will certainly come back sooner because people can drive and it's local market kind of behavior and everyone wants to get back to work. So I think that will come back along with the leisure business. It's the big national accounts and the big groups that will have restrictions and constraints on them. And unfortunately, that makes up a pretty substantial part of the overall business in the US. But depending on where you are, you can still get a fairly sizable amount of that if you're located in a good place and you depend mainly on local and regional. Your business is going to come back in 12 months, 18 months. The big box hotels with big groups may be looking at a more like a 48-month kind of recovery. So it's right. A bit widespread.
So it's not going to be equal amongst all the different divisions. So Dale, following up on what Cindy said, does her words ring true? If so, how do you see it?
Well, we're a little bit concerned about some aspects of leisure. One of the things we see is the use of PTO. Now, our data set are hotel employees, but in the first few weeks of the crisis, there was a ton of vacation hours being used up in the hotel industry as people went out on leave or they were told to stay away from the office and they were told to use their time. Our concern is that if this is true across other industries, that people might have there might be a lot of latent demand for leisure travel, but it might be held back a bit by two things: the lack of PTO, they've used it, and the lack of a job in the case of those who have not yet returned to work. So we're a little concerned about that, but we also know that wedding business, for example, there's a huge backlog. Some certain types of weekend business will come back probably a bit stronger. We're also giving guidance to hotels when they are revisiting their labor standards, their staffing guidelines, that they need to expect high volatility in occupancy, even in what would normally be very stable markets where, Monday through Thursday is always about the same and weekends are always about the same. That's not going to be the case. We're going to see wild fluctuations in occupancy probably for the next 9 to 12 months.
I think that's a really good point about PTO. People are going to use their PTO and their client or their boss is going to say, well, you've been off all this time. It's time to get back to work. But I think the bosses that can afford it and the good bosses, and I'll say it, the good bosses are going to give you your PTO time back. So if you had 2 weeks that you took, I think it's somehow you've got to get some of that time back because that was forced time off. That wasn't time you spent at Disney World. That was time you spent on your couch. So I think that you got to look at that. Cindy, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think also it's very spotty in terms of industry. I mean, tech companies, pharmaceutical companies, healthcare related businesses are fine. And because people are desperate to get out and go on, take time off, and we're entering toward the summer. So I think that, yes, it's true. It's going to be uneven again, and there's going to be, but anyone in healthcare and anyone in tech companies and pharmaceutical are going to want vacation more than anyone because we've all been, kind of cabin fever.
And
my only concern. Oh, sorry, Del. Go.
No, they deserve it too. I was just going to say.
I find that really interesting. And to your point, I have friends that are working, friends that aren't working. The friends that are working can't wait to go on vacation. They keep asking me, like I have a switch on my desk that says, travel is on. Let's go. But it is going to be uneven. But what's interesting is 2 weeks ago, we couldn't talk about time levels. And I think time frames. Now I think we're talking about time frames, and the time frames aren't what we want to hear. Cindy, we don't want to hear 48 months before the big box, come back. We don't want to hear that Vegas won't be, 80% for 48 months. We don't want to hear that. But I think we're kind of, as long as things don't go and reset themselves with the virus and things, like if we look at Georgia in a week and they're saying things got much worse, I think we're going to see a major setback across the country, and governors are going to be hesitant to open. So, and I know New York's opening May 15th, and I think that's
parts of New York are going to open May 15th. Not everything.
Okay, parts of it. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much. I felt attacked, by the way, the way you spoke to me. But parts of New York City are going to open slowly, and I think everybody's looking at charges. But my point being is, if everything stays status quo and we are opening slowly in different levels, I think 48 months is practical for a big box, for a convention center hotel, but it's scary as hell.
Right, but don't forget, there are tens of thousands of smaller hotels that are not in that situation who may bounce back in, 9, 12, 18 months. So I just think it's going to be scattered across the industry. It's not going to be consistently the same for everybody.
So this is the type of thing that we see all the time, right, Anthony? It's the whole idea of we try to fit a single answer to the entire hospitality industry because it's just so easy for us to talk in aggregate about the numbers. But we all know it's a street corner business. We all know that your hotel is different than the fundamentals of other hotels that are out there, and it will be different for absolutely everybody. But when we have these conversations, I think, Anthony, it's really a great opportunity for us to understand the overall vibe and where we're going to be headed, even if that information isn't specific to a single property.
Sure. And what I'm hearing is, listen, I feel I'm as positive about the industry as any human being alive. It's going to come back, and it's going to be the best it's ever been. It's going to take a little while though. But Del, Glenn told me you're the smartest human being in the world. So based on that, outside of Cindy, what percentage? And I want an exact percentage, and you have to be right because I'm going to come back in a year and hold you accountable. A percentage you think that we're going to lose of the hospitality industry? What percentage you don't think is going to come back?
You're talking about people?
Yeah, I'm talking about people since you're the labor guy.
Yeah. So we were already seeing record turnover before all this really started. And part of the reason is that, there's some hard jobs in hospitality. People might want to be in a people-centric business like ours, but it's a burnout. There are a lot of burnout jobs. Now you got to compete with the fact that they're being introduced to other income earning alternatives. Anybody with a car is looking at delivery services, which are seeing their huge growth. So they're going to be hard to get back. The people that do return will be a different group of people. And that means that unless we get our arms around onboarding, unless we start doing onboarding a lot better than we've done for a lot of these line level positions in the industry, we could actually see worse turnover than before. But I guarantee you that a year from now, the makeup of hotels outside of the management staff, outside of the people who had mobility within their jobs, the line level workers, it's going to be entirely different a year from now than it was this past February.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. I can't talk about the forecast, but how people were treated. Even back when I was running hotels 10, 15 years ago, I saw employees come to my hotel and say, "You're the first hotel, the first company to train me for 90 days before you put me in front of guests, or 30 days before you put me in front of a guest." I basically got with a person that wasn't really good at their job and was told to basically follow them. And I really never learned my job. So I was about to leave the industry. I was just had somebody on the show a couple weeks ago that almost left the industry and was telling the story how our team kept them effective. And I think that is so important because, as we said, when people come back, you're going to have your pick of the litter. But those people that are the pick of the litter, okay, the people that do come back, I'm not saying that everybody's going to come back now, but I'm saying the people that do come back that say, I love this industry more than ever, those people, you got to wrap your arms around and really train and really protect them. You know, I'll give, I won't say what hotel, but recently there was a person that I put, a friend of mine, helped me get a job for this young man, 19 years old. And he was the first one laid off because he was the first one that was brought on. But his job, he was promoted so quickly that his job was so unique. It was basically preventive maintenance. They brought him back. Okay. Just recently brought him back. And he is so motivated and excited because of the way he was brought back. He was made to feel safe. He was made to feel respected. And he was being told that if you don't feel comfortable doing something, don't do it. And so I think that that's really the way we get back. And again, even if we get back to 80%, those 20% of the people maybe just didn't have the heart for this business. You know, it's like, I think a lot of businesses, the people that have the heart for this business, you can't go anywhere else. I can't drive an Uber. I can't do anything else. Because this is like it's asking a musician to put down their guitar.
Right. I've seen it. Anthony can't do anything else. This is it. This is it for him. All right. Well, we gotta move along a little bit. But Cindy, do you have any other final data bits and stuff like that? And failing that, how about a good plug for how people could find you again and all of that kind of stuff before we let you go? Oh, hey, we got to scroll over there.
Great. Yeah, so I just want to say that I'm extremely optimistic. We're one of the few industries that can't go virtual. I mean, we're not like retail that you can shop online or newspapers that you can go online. People will travel again. I mean, that is our industry. People will stay in hotels and they will travel, even if they're virtual experiences. So I'm ultimately optimistic. I just think we have a fairly protracted path for some hotels, and for others, I think it will come back. I mean, we're going to be in a recession. There's going to be a lot of headwinds, but ultimately people want to travel and they want to get out and they want to get back to what they've been doing, not just the pent-up demand in short term. We are not a virtual business. We can't convert to virtual. So people will stay in hotels and it will come back. We just have to be much smarter. And we have to, you know, we thought we were smart after the 2009 recession and everybody got smart about cost savings and controlling labor. I mean, I talk about cost of customer acquisition. We have to pay attention to this. Like, we're going to have Google and Amazon and others out there. I mean, it could be that Expedia and Booking.com get acquired as a result of the troubles they've had. These big players are going to compete with the brands, and the price of everything is going to go up, and individual hotels are going to have to pay for it. We have to be smarter about how we operate. We can't, you know, spend all the money we've been spending. We can't have entire large sales teams and revenue management teams and e-commerce teams. We're going to have commercial teams that are much more integrated. We're going to just have to be smarter and more efficient about how we do our business. And this is going to force the issue. But the business will come back because it will not, you can't go virtual. I mean, a portion of it may, but I'm very optimistic about the future of travel and hotels.
Cindy, if you have a mic there, can you just drop it and walk away?
Yeah, totally.
That was perfect. Thank you. That was very informative.
All
right, Cindy Estes Green, thank you so much for being here. She's got great information. I highly encourage everybody to reach out to Calabri Labs over there. I've known her for years. I can definitely vouch for her. Not a paid announcement. Cindy, thank you so much for being here. We will see you soon. All right, let's bring in our next guest to join this motley crew that we have. All right, welcome. I know it's hysterical every single time. It cracks me up. Brendan Turner, President, Ken Patel of Global Hotel Group. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Brandon, being that you're president of the company, give us a quick understanding of what your company is all about and all of that. on all of that? If you can, Brandon, if you can.
I lost sound there for just a moment. Can you?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Give us a quick understanding of your company and how many properties you have and your focus and all of that kind of good stuff, so our audience can have a better understanding of what you guys do.
Yeah, perfect. I'm the president of Global Hotel Group. We're a hotel management and ownership group located in Atlanta, Georgia. We have just over 60 properties now, and we're kind of a mix of, in our portfolio, we have hotels that range from Marriott Autograph Collection all the way down to economy segment properties. And we're kind of, it's an interesting mix that we have during this time, having those economy properties and seeing the difference in the economy segment into the limited service, mid-scale, select service brands, and then all the way up to full service. We're kind of getting a good feel for how all the different segments are being impacted by this COVID-19. And so that's been interesting. We've been around since 2001. Global was founded, and of course our owners have been in the industry for well over 40 years. And so it's been interesting to say the least for all of us.
So before we get into the details of kind of the hotel, and I want to get back to what Cindy said and kind of answer you guys about what you think, what she said. But Georgia opened. We're all looking at Georgia. What does it look like? Are people being respectful? Are both shops open? Tell us what it looks like on the ground.
Yeah, so it's been interesting, since the governor announced the opening of the state. And, I would say so far we haven't seen a big change yet. There's some hesitancy on really everybody's part to go visit. You do see some barber shops that are open, some salons that are open. I've heard of people going and not very many people there. And you're seeing restaurants starting to open, dining rooms a little bit. Again, people are hesitant to go visit those. I feel like we're going to see a little, the original stay-at-home order for Georgia expires on the 30th of this month. And so kind of what we're hearing a lot of people say is they really want to wait until that day and see kind of what happens and start venturing out a little bit more. So not, I would say from Friday to today, not a big difference in really what we're seeing in the hotel business, rooms sold, things like that.
So people are really managing their own, making their own decisions. They're not saying, okay, this is a green card to just run, this is a green light to just go run and get a haircut. It's go get my nails done. Well,
there was no long lines outside of the salons when you drive by and take a look, because that was one thing I was interested in to kind of see. You heard a lot of chatter on social media about salons and things like that, and there are definitely not a lot of long lines, people waiting. I think people are being cautious, so they're kind of. I think people are going to do it on their own time, not necessarily.
That's good news. That's good news.
Yeah.
And getting back to Ken, why don't we introduce you, Ken, and tell everybody a little bit about you, and
Thanks,
then I have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I recently just moved to Georgia in 2018, but previous to that, I was in the New York City market for 32 years. VP of operations there for about 8-9 years, and then moved down to Georgia. And I recently just joined Global Hotels back in January. Brendan and I connected. They've got a great line of portfolio, very up and coming, and obviously a lot more to come. So that's pretty much it.
What do you think about what Cindy's saying about the time frames and about luxury hotel or full service hotel and limited service hotel? Brandon, what are you thinking about that? What's your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. There's going to be a difference in how we see each segment bounce back and the timing of what that looks like. I didn't get to hear all of what Cindy had said specifically about that, but I know that we are definitely going to be seeing. I think you're going to see the full service hotels are going to kind of operate a little bit more like limited select service for a while. I don't know how long that's going to be and what that's going to look like from a guest perspective, but it will be interesting.
Excellent. All right, I got a question for all of you guys. Chris, let me address this one to you. One of the things that I've been hearing a lot more in the last couple of days, and I'd love for all of you guys to get some context on this as well, is people on unemployment, hotel workers, with that extra $600 they're getting, they seem to be making more money in many instances than they were prior. To me, this seems to be an issue of who's taking a job and who really is in it for a career. Chris, what are you seeing in terms of your associates? How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, we actually talked about it this morning on our leadership call with our VP of HR. We're talking about, which is great, we're talking about return to work now. We're starting to get, we saw the bottom, we believe, of our portfolio's curve last week. We've seen a little tiny tick to the north, which has been great, to about 15.2% occupancy. So we're starting to talk about return to work. Now, what you just described is a fact. The CARES Act has provided that extra $600. That ends at the end of July. So I think that when you're comparing, is it a career or is it a choice right now, that it's a difficult one. But yeah, I'm really concerned about it because we are going to start calling people back to work. And quite frankly, under the law, if someone's offered return to work and they deny it, they become ineligible for unemployment benefits. And so it sets up a scenario where we as employers can be seen as the bad guy for trying to get people to come back to work. And actually, that's a concern of mine about how we're going to have those conversations with our laid off team, because we want them all back, right? And this is a longer term decision than just the short 8 weeks we have left or 10 weeks we have left till July 31st. But I think it's Dell might have some insight into it, but I think it's a real wave that's going to be facing us here soon.
Well, Dell definitely has some insight because I saw that face you made when I brought up the topic. So let's hear it.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough, I think, to get some people to come back, whether or not they're allowed to turn down an offer and stay on benefit. I can't imagine that the government will be able to keep up with and track those kinds of denied offers very well. So it's a real factor. One of the things that we're seeing is that as hotels get into this, have moved out of the panic phase and into the planning for recovery phase, they are rethinking the way that they do things in the past. They know that they've had inefficiencies in their labor model. They know that they've had maybe imprecise compensation strategies. So they're taking a look at everything right now. I mean, GMs are doing every single job in a hotel to a degree they haven't in a long time. We advise everybody to carry around a stopwatch with them to reinvent their labor standards and redo their scheduling. And if they're not using some kind of legal competitive wage benchmarking product right now, they absolutely need to do it, because it's going to cost more, at least in the short term, to get good people to come back. Maybe you can say, hey, we'll just bridge the gap till this extra $600 goes away, and pay them that. But it's going to cost more, and then maybe it'll cost less. But you have to know that you're paying exactly on your comp strategy. And if you don't know what the competition's paying, you'll be in trouble. And it's also really important to note, you can't call around and ask your competitors what they're paying. That is illegal. That is a felony. Hotels do it all the time. They shouldn't need to.
Nobody does that, Dell. Nobody does that.
They do it all the time.
Dell, I wish I had the ability to take you out of the site, because I'm offended that you would say that I ever did anything like that.
I know that, Anthony. No,
hold on. This one is for Anthony.
What? Oh.
I just remembered.
But you know what? Also, how you bring people back is critical, because they're going to talk. They're going to say, "Hey, they brought me back. I'm nervous wreck. I just had this happen recently. Is that me or is that somebody else?"
I think it may be coming from somebody else.
Maybe
it's you. I don't know.
So
great content.
But real quick question, or not really a statement. How you bring people back is going to matter, and they're going to tell their friends. They're going to take pictures of themselves with their mask and gloves, saying that we have the supplies, we don't have the supplies. The supervisors don't know what the hell they're doing. They do know what they're doing. So I think you've got to really be tight day one and worry not less about your customer, but first worry about your employee and making them feel comfortable and safe, so they can tell everybody else, hey, everything's good. Come back to work. We need you. We want you. You're safe. And again, it's going to be their personal opinion, but they're going to have to make that choice. But you'll make it easier for them if you don't do it the right way. Chris, what do you think about that?
Anthony, our mutual friend Jimmy Taylor pointed out something that's really good. He said for the past decade, we've been telling people it's all about the customer, it's all about the customer, it's all about the customer, guest satisfaction. And then second things go bad, they're out of a job. And so the implicit message was, it was really about the money. We have to be very careful when we bring people back to recognize that some of them may feel a sense of betrayal because they bought in and now we want them to come back again. So we're really going to have to be aware of that. And it just adds an extra burden on that re-onboarding process for those who are lucky enough to get back to work.
You know, I'm sorry, Chris, just real quick. That's a really excellent point. One of the things I've always done is I show employees my P&L and give them the reasons why I made decisions. And I think if you can show them why you made those decisions, they have a buy-in. So I've always been very comfortable showing my employees the P&L. Obviously, I won't show them the net revenue, but I'll show them all the expenses and all the revenue that's coming in and where it's going. But I think that's critical to share why people made the decisions they made. I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I was just going to say that while I think that's, what Del said is maybe broadly true, I think there's lots of companies over the last 3 years that realized we were at a tipping point financially, that we were taking too much profit and not paying enough attention to our associates, while they're, other industries or Amazons of the world and the Ubers are working hard to get people to come over to them. So, there were so many companies, my peer set, Chesapeake's always been a culture company, but my peer set, lots of focus on culture and taking care of the associates. And quite frankly, when we had to do the layoffs in the field, only this time, Del, in 2009, it was not the same. But this time, the staff understood that there was just nothing anybody could do at this point. So I think in bringing them back, we're going to have to really ensure their safety and ensure that they, like Anthony said, feel cared for first. And then when they do that, they'll care for our guests. So,
yeah. All right. So, Brandon, maybe you could comment on what they're saying.
Yeah, that's the, that's going to be the catch-22 there. There's that image there from both guests and employees, and everybody's going to be looking. Everybody's going to be asking, what are you doing to protect me? What are you doing to protect me as an employee? What are you doing to protect me as a guest? And, that's what our conversations are right now, is we're also seeing kind of an uptick in some rooms in different markets, and we're slowly needing to bring on employees. We just had a call earlier today as well, and we're starting to get that feedback that hey, I don't want to come back. In certain couple of states, as of this week, they began getting the sort of the federal unemployment check, so that extra $600. And I think as people they start getting that, it does open their eyes up a little bit to trying to figure out when they want to come back. And I think our strategy is to try to, the best we can, try to coach our teams that we want to bring back with saying, hey, think long term here. If we can, this is very temporary. For employees, especially that have worked with us for a number of years, you look at that and say, we want you for the next few years and as long as you want to be with us. But this whole unemployment thing is very temporary. So, but I get it. I get how they feel, and it's hard to blame them. But I think that's where we have to coach them and try to, help them see that.
Well, there's two types of people, right? And I can say, because I'm not associated with a brand or a company, there's two types of people: the people that are milking the system, and people that don't feel safe. So if you don't feel safe, you'll know that as a boss, and you should have patience and understanding for people. But then there's people that milk the system. But I will say, loyalty is paid. So if people are going to remember, I will remember if my employees, came to work and they were a little skittish and I really made them feel safe. I'm going to remember that. Not saying that someone that really doesn't feel safe and calls me up and in a real true way says, Anthony, I have suffered from anxiety. Anthony, this is really concerning me. I don't want to come back. Please, I want to work for you. I love my job. I want to come back. Once I feel it's safe, I will be the first one to work and I will give you everything I gave you before. So there's two ways to do this. ignore the phone call back to work, like some people are doing, and milk the system, or go back to work. Or the third way is have a real conversation with your boss. There's no one on this panel right now that would not understand or appreciate that, because some people on this panel feel that way.
Right. How about you, Ken? What do you think about all this?
Well, I mean, I've seen all sides of it. I think even going back to being in New York City, being in Georgia, being overseas in Dubai for my MBA, I feel like being in New York City during the recession, and then what I'm seeing in Georgia right now, it's even like when I went into my barbershop that I always go into, and they closed off the whole waiting area. They had like a security guard at the door. They said, "You have an appointment?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And then they have it cut off where there's a chair, and then nobody can sit next to that chair. Then there's another chair that they would use, and then they wouldn't use a straight blade. So I think there's definitely restrictions in place, and I believe that it's going to take a while, even though talking to my neighbor that's a neurosurgeon, he works at Emory Hospital here in Atlanta. And, he mentioned to me, he's like, the hospitals are losing money by taking on COVID-19 patients because they're not able to bill all the other medical necessities that they would normally do. So people feel like, oh, the hospitals are getting money part of this funding and they don't need it. I think they still need it. The hospitality industry needs it. And what I'm seeing with Georgia itself, and during this period where people are like, okay, it's reopened, but it's physically not reopened. Nobody wants to go
and to your point, it's really about how you make people feel, and people feel comfortable. Chris, what I said before about that conversation, if somebody calls you and really says, listen, I just can't come back to work right now, I want to, I mean, you're going to empathize with them.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to. You're going to have to. And that's what's so complex is the drafting of your return to work policies, because, I don't even know. I haven't really, in my mind, Anthony, I believe that when they say go, I'm going to run to Jack's airport and get on an airplane. But I mean, I'm just being transparent here. I don't know if I'm going to have a little bit of jitters or whatever. I've been in my house 40 days, right? So how can I expect my employees not to have some anxiety too about returning to work when we're not 100% sure the all clear is? I think that that's a very, we talked last week about having mental support, access to mental health professionals. I think it's a very real PTSD situation because there's lots of scariness around this thing.
And I'll add, there's another element, Anthony, that I think we need to consider. It's housekeeping is the hardest job that there is. Now, it theoretically might be the riskiest job that there is. So how do you get staff to feel more comfortable, Chris? Do you have to wind up paying them more? How are you starting to process the reality that things have changed when it comes to the housekeeping department?
I said this last week as well, and it's really sitting with me pretty heavy, is next to the frontline workers in the hospitals and the services that the military and everybody else that's servicing this, who else is more exposed than our team members that access these guest rooms of travelers from all over the world, multiple stays? I think that that's something we really need to be thinking about as an industry. And I know Phil Cordell from Hilton is going to address what Hilton's doing. And Marriott last week addressed a little bit of what they're doing, but we're really going to have to up our game and really, what do you do if you really thought you cared for your employees, but now you realize you need to take more steps to care for your frontline associates?
And that's a good question, because do you have somebody come in and sterilize the room before you have a housekeeper go in and clean the room? And that, I'm doing a webinar series that I start today at 2:00.
How do we sign up for it, Anthony?
And the first thing we do is, I'll tell you in a second, the first thing we do is we're talking about revenue strategies post-COVID-19. And the reason I went out with that first instead of the standards of sterilizing a room or cleaning a room is because I don't know. I'm talking to Cintas on Friday. We're going to have Cintas on. We're going to have Hilton on today. And I'm looking at their standards, and I'm trying to figure it out and put together what I think is a comprehensive plan. So those are the things we got to answer before we really put people back to work. Because the first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if this is right or wrong, I would sterilize the room before I have my housekeeper go in. I would go in, have somebody with a mask go in, sterilize it, then have her clean it, and then maybe sterilize it again. I don't know. I mean, it's at that point, Chris, and I'm glad you said it. You said post-traumatic stress disorder. You're the first person to say it on the show, but it's true. I see it. I'm seeing it with people, with family members, that people are literally, someone asked me, how do I get back into society? I don't know the first step on how to leave my house. Someone that literally said that to me. They have not left their house in 6 weeks. They're afraid. They haven't gone to the store or anything. So I think that's a really good point. And to Ken's point about the barbershop, and it's the way you make people feel. If I went to get a haircut, no ball jokes, but if I went to get a haircut or a shave or a manicure, I want to see a security guard at the door. I want to see a separation of space. I want to see my a hairstylist with a mask on. I want to see them with Purell everywhere. And so I think that's how you start integrating it. But there's no easy way. And the thing that we've been talking about the most is we have to have patience with everyone. Everyone's sensitivity level. Del, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so we're seeing, we have 3 of our customers on this show, as it turns out, but across our customers, we're seeing a lot of different strategies related to housekeeping in particular. One of the most common is that the fact is that occupancy is going to stay low for a long time. It's going to be below 50% for most hotels for the remainder of this year. There is no reason to clean a room the moment that a guest checks out. And the best practice right now seems to be to leave rooms untouched for 1, maybe even 2 days before you go in, which seems to outlive the virus. In addition, stay over cleans are totally different now and may be non-existent in some markets. Guests don't want you in the rooms necessarily like they did before. If you have a process that you communicate up front that say, we will bring you fresh towels, we will bring you fresh linens, but we won't go into your room, that actually comforts both the guest and the worker during this time. And these are just simple things that may not be permanent, but they certainly would work today.
I think the standard is if they're there for 3 days, you give them 3 days of towels, you give them an extra set of sheets, you give them even extra pillows, extra blankets, so they don't have to ask the front desk. And also, instead of having them throw things on the floor, everyone should put some kind of container in the room that says towels and sheets. And if they want to, they can throw the soiled towels and sheets in that. So the housekeeper can come in, just grab that bag and bring it down to housekeeping. They don't have to get on the floor. They don't have to put themselves close to those. Again, whether you can contract the disease or not, it's about feeling safe. And it's about Chris is writing down notes and taking my ideas.
Yeah, well, that's good because you were too busy stealing everybody's ideas yesterday, Anthony. So a little comeuppance for you. Ken, I know you've got something to say, but right now Phil is trying to log in. He was having a little bit of issues there with the technology. He'll be on in just a second. Phil Cordell is, of course, from Hilton. Ken, what did you want to say, sir?
Yeah, so pretty much I was actually talking to an owner here in Georgia. They started their reopening process where they were approved for their PP loan and all that stuff. So they brought back, told their GMs, rehire. And, one of the GMs tried to bring the entire front desk staff back. And out of the 5 employees, only 2 came back saying, I make enough money right now. So I think they're looking at the short term and they're not looking at what the long term looks like. When everybody's going to hire, there's going to be a larger pool out there and the $600 is going to disappear. And I think that is the trend I'm seeing, that our entry-level employees, whether it be breakfast, housekeeping, front desk, they are not willing to come back for the amount that they were making before. And they want to take that $600 and they're seeing that they're going to be able to even get more depending on what might be approved.
Well, the bad news for them is it's all going to go away eventually. So the people that don't feel safe, they shouldn't go back to work. But the people that feel safe shouldn't be thinking that way. And that's just the bottom line. This industry is an industry of reference. We reference and we call and we help people get jobs, or we don't help people get jobs. Just the way it is. It's a small community. So, but with that said, if you don't feel safe, you don't go back to work. But if you're trying to milk the system, you'll be found out. Chris, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
No, what do I want to say? I just think we need to, listen, we're all on this show and we've all had our careers, right? But I understand, I remember when I was when $600 was like my rent for 2 months. So
Yeah.
living week to week and living in the now is what a lot of people are doing, and a lot of our staff, is doing. And so it's really a balancing act between the demands and needs of the asset and the demands and needs and the care and concern for our associates. So,
But going forward, Chris, I understand that, and I empathize with that because listen, I didn't come from I was always working for my milk money. I didn't come from money, right? So I understand that, and I'm an advocate of a housekeeper, and I say it almost on every show. Joe Madge's trying to get a new suit. The housekeeper's trying to get a container of milk. I completely understand that. What I'm trying to make people understand, specifically a company like yours that has done everything in their power to do everything the right way, is you're going to have a long-term career and you're going to have people caring for you. Don't take the short term. And Glenn, are we ready to go? Because I see you getting anxious.
No, I am super anxious over there because Phil was going to go the mobile route and sign on, but he has not yet joined us, and that's why I'm anxiety prone, because I want to share this great interview that we got coming on. I don't want to disappoint our listeners out there. Not to say that you guys aren't the most amazing people, but
But Chris, I don't want to, and I hope I didn't come off the wrong way. I didn't come off the wrong way, but there's a mindset, right?
Yeah.
There's a mindset. And yes, if you need that $600 to survive this week, I understand that. And again, I think it's about communication. I think it's about clear communication. The more you talk to your supervisor, the more you talk to your manager, especially if it's a good company like yours, they're going to be understanding. I mean, again, if somebody calls you and say, Chris, I need the $600 right now. My wife's not working and I need the money, man. I can't come back to work. I need that extra $600. Everyone is going to be understanding. It's when you just decide to isolate yourself and just not call people back or pretend you're not just milking it for not milking, but just not taking extra money and you want to come back, but you can't afford to.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think it's important to remember that before this happened, in the U.S., the typical housekeeper, when they came on board, they would last 3 weeks and then quit. 30% of housekeepers leave after 3 weeks, right? It is a really, really hard job that is not for everybody. And now it's a hard and scary job. So whether or not we have to incentivize people to come on board in the short term or not, or we just guilt them into coming back, we have to be very sensitive to how we bring him on board. And to Chris's point, and I think Brandon and Ken were saying the same thing, we have to open our arms around them and really let them realize how important they are and how important they are to us as hoteliers, that we care about them, that we care about their safety and their security.
Their safety is paramount, and their safety and the care for them is absolutely paramount. And they'll feel that or they won't feel that. And that's up to the company. And because people are going to have a choice.
Right. Okay. Breaking news. Phil Cordell has arrived in the green room. So, gentlemen, I'm going to put you guys on ice for a little bit. Nothing personal, but we got to talk to Phil over here. So just hang on as we clear the space.
And Italians, when we say we're going to put you on ice, it's a whole different.
All right. So let's get set.
I get to stay. Wow, I'm excited.
You've earned the right. The one, the only, Mr. Phil Cordell. How are you, my friend?
Sorry. Between Zoom and GoToMeetings and it's a technology opportunity.
Phil, ever since we announced your name, I've been getting more texts and emails than I've ever gotten about a guest. So thank you so much for coming on. We know how busy you are.
I'm so sorry. Technology, I was talking to some of our younger interns at work before this all started, and we were talking about what happened before technology. And I said, well, we had conference calls where you couldn't see people, and we had flip charts and stuff like that. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? But we're good.
Let's forget Hilton CleanStay. I want to talk about old school faxing technology today. So congratulations for being out of the gate with this, Phil. Anthony and I in our show in the last 5-6 weeks that we've been doing this, we've been talking about the need for this. The thing that strikes me most is how you were able to put together what looks like such a comprehensive program so quick with the help of RB, who's the makers of Lysol and Dettol, while also consulting with the Mayo Clinic. Tell us a little bit about how this all together. What can guests and hotel owners and operators expect?
Wow, what an amazing journey. So, right, when this all started, right, first order of duty was to kind of make help our hotels get settled into new reality, right? How do we take care of customers in house? How do we transition to closing, furlough, all that stuff we need to do? So then about 3.5 weeks ago, we said, wow, now it's early, but we got to start to think about what happens to get guests back. We know that there's going to be some resets and expectations. Cleanliness has always been important, but now it's probably going to have, an exclamation point after it. How do we think about this? There's no roadmap. How do we figure this out? So we had done some social listening to kind of understand what was important. We pulled together this team of about 20 cross-functional members, internal as well as external resource. We kind of curated this library of 2,000 ideas that we pulled together within a day of how to target. We kind of pulled those into kind of 5 categories: welcome, check-in, arrival, food and beverage, public space, and then just started to drill down and say, through some social listening, which one are the most important. We locked in on 13 that had some common themes. We said, these are the 13 we're going to attack. Now let's think about how we use our expertise and external expertise. So we started linking in with Mayo Clinic for conversations on their kind of insights on health cleaning. We reached out to several kind of consumer-facing cleanliness brands to help. And obviously, this is the busiest time for any of them they've ever had. We locked on to Lysol and RB. And here we go. I mean, we signed an agreement with Mayo and RB within oh my gosh, it made our legal guys head spin, probably 6 days or something.
Wow.
Right? So here we are, warp speed done, ready to go. Talked about it yesterday. Now the teams are working on all the tactics, training materials, video, all the stuff we need to get to hotels 2 weeks before launch date in early June.
So what does it look like? What does it look like if I'm a housekeeper and a guest just checked out? What does that look like?
All right, so a guest just checked out or in. Okay, so a housekeeper's going into the room. Remember, when a guest first checks in, it's going to be into a room that's been kind of triple checked. It's been cleaned thoroughly, as always, by our baseline chemicals. We'll have a top line overview of top 10 hotspots that, remote controls, telephone, toilet plunger, or toilet flusher, all those things that we've gotten kind of an extra layer of disinfectant from Lysol. All the paper goods removed from the room. So they're kind of the guest is walking to a room that's sealed even, so they know it's clean. So then the housekeeper comes. So then the housekeeper comes, we strip the room. It's just everything in reverse of what I just said. So we strip the room. We go through a baseline cleaning approach, paying extra attention to the high touch point areas. There's a little bit less stuff in the room for me to clean. We've taken out paper goods, all that stuff. I've got my checklist of these are the 10 areas that need special attention. I pull out my wipes, my Lysol, I squirt, spray, and work my way out of the room.
And are you sealing? When you say you're sealing, what do you mean by sealing?
It means they took our idea, Anthony. That's what it means. They'll go for it.
No, so as the housekeeper leaves, he or she, once they're outside the room, they're kind of cleaning their way outside of the room, right? So once they've left the room, they actually put a little seal. I mean, reflect back to those of us who are old enough when you would stay in a hotel,
for your
seal on the toilet or something, right? So the seal's on the door, so the guest knows that since housekeeping cleaned it, nobody's been in there to impinge on it, and we're guest ready.
Okay, so is anyone going in there? And everybody's been talking about foggers and sanitizing the room with a gun. Are you
got a question on a UV light?
Yeah. There's some really cool technology that's out there. I think a little bit of it is somewhat untested, and we were uncomfortable kind of saying out of the gate because, again, speed. We're hoping that customers start to come back to see us maybe mid-June. There's no magic timeline, but we got to be ready. So something like the foggers and stuff, kind of untested, and having availability that quickly was not didn't enable it to be ready for phase 1. So in the next few weeks, we'll kind of be revisiting. We think with things like foggers, there's certainly some application like in meeting space or other areas where you have a broad area to need to cover. So I think that's probably where that technology will fit, but we need to make sure it's right first.
So do you anticipate increase in labor to be able to do this, these touch points and really do an even more thorough job than you've always done?
I don't know if it'll be an increase in labor number of FTEs. There probably is going to be some incremental time in the room itself, right? But what we're trying to do is look from an operational perspective holistically to say, okay, there's some things we're going to need to do. Might incremental labor be a bit higher? Yes. May this kind of double layer of a well-known disinfectant protection layer add a bit of little costs? Yes. But if we take paper goods out of the room, we're taking away costs. So there's other things that we're doing to take away costs. So our kind of North Star is when all said and done across the 13 areas, some cost a little bit more, some cost a little bit less, but from an operational perspective, it's a wash.
Right. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, Phil, it's very hard for me to find questions from all our audience because they're too busy praising how awesome you are out there. But how is this being communicated to the different hotels? What are your expectations for hotels going through with all of these plans that you're putting out there?
Wow, so the core team has been working fast and feverishly over these past 2.5 weeks with inclusion from another corporate number of team members. At the same time, or before we did our public launch yesterday, we did a more detailed launch to about 500 corporate team members that are throughout the enterprise. So everything from the call center for reservations to revenue management to our field team that helps take care of our calls every day. They're what I would call kind of key influencers and communicators. So we did kind of as in-depth as we could be yesterday, overview to them to share everything from FAQs to what does this look like in a one-pager that you can share with a hotel? How do we think about communicating this to key business clients, et cetera? So that was kind of our train the trainer top line kickoff yesterday. So those 500 influencers and communicators went out to kind of start to spread the word. And then as we go through the week this week, we have additional engagement with owners. Important step in the journey, right? We pulled together fast and feverishly to get the 13 outlined with some owner feedback. Now that we have a better sense of what those are, we're going to reach out to owners to say, how can we massage these, make these a bit better? We're doing a series of GM calls this week and subsequently up until mid-May. So at this point, it's kind of use the influencers and communicators, stay in close contact, make it as easy for the hotels as we can. Because obviously they're challenging their way through a lot of stuff now, right? So they've got to feel like this can fit in their day, and how do we make it work? So it's all about communicate.
I can't agree more. And coming out of this, when people decide when we all settle down, what hotel they want to put up and what brand they want to put on that hotel, the brands that were there and that acted efficiently but also thoroughly. I'm going to buy that brand if I'm a hotel owner. If you took care of me, Phil, and gave me my plan and made me feel that you really are on top of it, that's a big deal. That's going to be a big decision maker for me, because right now you've seen owners, the strongest owners you've ever met in your life, feeling very vulnerable right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a couple of 6 months, when they're feeling stronger again, they're going to remember that they were taken care of. So thank you very much for rolling this out so thoroughly and quickly.
No, thank you, Anthony. We actually, to build on that, and I know we're tight on time, actually spoke yesterday to our development team in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and they had a few franchisees potentially who had been independent or with other brands who said, we just saw this announcement, and that's the kind of company that we want to be part of, right, to your point. So it takes a village, right? But
right.
We get
well,
there.
I gotta tell you, you guys have been handling this situation in such a positive way, and it really seems that you've taken it by the horns. And when we come out on the other end of this, you are going to gain the trust of not just developers, but of customers as well. And I think you've got good things looking ahead for the Hilton.
One of the things we were talking about with the other guests was labor. And this, the PPP, where people are getting $600 extra, and how do you incentivize people to come back? I mean, from your position, it must be something you guys think about.
Yeah, it's certainly labor's always been a challenge, even more so now, right? So I think more and more, I think in this interim crisis period, people are all about, I have to have money to pay the bills, right? So cash. I think longer term, employers who are able to kind of provide the right communication, the right benefits, the right level of engagement, ultimately that will bring people back, right? The money has to be there, but the other stuff I think will play a role, right? So it's about recognizing that and making the team members feel as comfortable as we can too, right? Because as we think about facial masks and or facial coverings and stuff in hotels, making not only that we've got the financial thing to work through, we got to make sure they feel comfortable. Like, I'm going to be around a whole bunch of people now that I didn't have to be around before. Are you going to take care of me? Right. So exactly. More than ever, we got to make sure we're taking care of those team members. And, it's a journey. It's learning and adjusting a day at a time.
And going back to something you said before, we have a question about it. When you're saying take the paper products out, before, if there was 3/4 of a roll of toilet paper, maybe we'd keep it in. So you're taking the half a box of tissues out, the 3/4 toilet paper out. What are you doing with amenities? Are you keeping with the big canisters, a small one? What's the
Yeah,
state?
I mean, let's think about that a little bit. So, I mean, there's some paper goods that are easy to come out of the room. Think about you walk into a room and sometimes there's a magazine about the brand. There's some notepads or stuff that probably even in non-aware times like we are now, customers go, how many times has somebody touched that, right? So you kind of take that stuff out of the room. Bulk, I think long-term, one of the things we have to think through as operators and leaders is how much of this guest focus is short-term versus what's the long tail going to be, what's going to last for a while, right? So I think that's where we have to strike the balance, because at its core, we're in the hospitality business, right? We're not in the medical institution business. So we've got to do what we can do to help a guest feel comfortable that ultimately helps them make the right decisions, right? So I think about this journey, something like sustainability as it relates to bulk amenities, that's the right big picture decision to make long term, is probably sustainability. So I think for brands that are already in that journey with us, that journey continues. Right. It becomes more about how we help the guests feel good. In the case of what we talked about, the top 10 hotspots, if you're a hotel that has bulk amenities today, that dispenser and what's around it will be one of those items. If you're using traditional amenities that are individually packaged, doing a wipe and clean of those items will be one of the top 10, right? So it's finding the right short term that is acceptable, that doesn't compromise the longer term vision. And I think, again, as hoteliers, that's the challenge, right? Short term versus long term. And we got to figure this out. And I think that's kind of real time, right? We don't have a playbook. Guests don't even know what to tell us. So all we can do is listen and kind of make the best decisions in the moment, keeping the long game in mind.
And speaking of that long game, one of the things we keep hearing about is this situation is going to accelerate the trends that we've already seen in the marketplace. Do you agree with that in principle? And maybe give us a trend or two that you see that will be accelerated because of this. Obviously, the keyless check-in, which is part of this, is one of those.
Yeah, I think the baseline is what's going to stay with us, right? I mean, if you think about and I think, Glenn, I even saw this on one of your shows that related, kind of the idea of housekeeping theater, right? There was a point in time where housekeeping happened kind of behind the scenes. Guests kind of knew or assumed it was there, something you didn't really talk about. I think because we've all been aware of this, I was sharing some facts yesterday, 71% of consumers now say that they're cleaning more personally at their home than they ever have before. And I think that kind of thing won't go away. So the idea of making housekeeping visible versus hiding it is something that will be there for a long time. So, I mean, I think there are things like that are not going to go away. As we reopen, will the restaurant tables need to be 6 feet apart and some of that kind of stuff? Absolutely. I think those things we'll see people kind of get more comfortable with. It won't be within a month, but over time. But those fundamentals will stay there, front and center being an important one.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. Anthony, got anything else for Phil over here?
Well,
again, I got a couple of questions coming through.
Go ahead, ask a question. I'll wait to the end.
So, Phil, one of the things that I've noticed in my peer group, when we're on the road in the last couple of years, we've stopped really wanting that daily housekeeping. We thought it was an intrusion. I think this is a good opportunity, maybe, to introduce that on a more, serious basis to your customers. Are you thinking about not doing cleaning if someone's only staying 2-3 days?
We're going to offer, I think ultimately the guest has to have some responsibility for making that decision. I mean, as operators, we might immediately jump into, there's cost savings, we're just going to do it and that's all they can choose, right? So I think there still has to be guest choice there. But absolutely, not only during this period, but potentially longer term, could we provide that kind of light touch housekeeping that we only go in and do 2 or 3 things and then we're out of your way. And maybe we only do that a couple of times during your stay, depending on your length of stay, right? I think that's where that kind of approach, and as hoteliers, we have to think about across the spectrum. That may feel a little bit different at a Waldorf or a luxury hotel than it might at a Hampton about guest expectations. But that kind of thinking, absolutely. And not cleaning for a stay over or adjusting the frequency is definitely on the list.
Excellent. Anthony?
Somebody made a suggestion that they talked about a Shield package available at the front desk, Shield shampoo, conditioner, available upon request. I mean, for an independent owner, I think that's a real solution. That could be something when you're talking about across a brand of, thousands of hotels and one hotel that has 1,400 rooms, having all that amenity at the front desk. I don't know if that would be the best standard. But again, I think whether you're working with a brand like with Phil or you're an independent hotel, I think everyone's got to make their own decision of what they're comfortable with. And that's really what it comes down to. We've got to, if I'm working with Hilton and Hilton puts a standard that I'm not comfortable with, I have to have a conversation with my leader and say, hey, this doesn't make sense for this hotel. So everything is right now, everything is open for discussion. And I really do think the do not disturb signs, if we use do not disturb signs anymore, are going to be 80%. I think you're going to walk down the hallway and you're going to see 80% of the rooms have do not disturb signs on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And Anthony, you're exactly right. I think that, certainly Hilton has a great program with CleanStay we're proud of. But even if you're an independent hotel, it's going to be that fine line of what are the baseline things that I need to do, not only because it's the right thing to do as a business, but it's what my customer expects, balanced with a little bit of that kind of guest responsibility, right? I mean, we could say, well, we're going to close all fitness rooms because the risk is just too great. That's probably going to be one of the things that guests are first going to jump into when they come back. And so there's only so much, like in a focused service hotel, there's only so much we can do, right? We can move the equipment apart. We can't have somebody in there necessarily, monitoring and managing the situation. We can move the equipment apart. We can have wipes and other information or other stuff there. We can send housekeeping a little bit more frequently in. But at some point, a guest has to kind of make the decision about, am I comfortable engaging in that way or not, right? So I think to use that as an example, that as hoteliers, it's that kind of mix, right? What do we feel like we have to do to be right? And then for the other areas that are a little bit more ambiguous, how do we provide enough that the guest gets to make the choice? And maybe that choice gets easier over time. I don't know. We'll see.
I went to a Y in my neighborhood a couple months ago. My gym was closed, and brand new Y, and every single person, way before COVID, every single person wiped down every piece of machinery. It was almost you felt like the idiot out in the cold if you didn't wipe down. I literally forgot to wipe down one of the barbells. And I was walking out to get my stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot to wipe down that barbell. I went back and wiped down that barbell because I didn't want everybody to be talking about me that I didn't wipe down their equipment. Yeah. So we just got to be sensitive. And if you're in that environment and you set that environment up with procedures and wipes, and you show the guests, this is what you do. I think, especially in hotels, because people are there, they're business people. They're going to, I think, be disciplined enough to as you said, make your own choice, and that's true. We all have to make our own choices. There are going to be some people jumping on planes as soon as they say we can jump on planes, and some people they're going to wait 6 months, and some people have decided already, I'm not going to be a salesperson anymore because I don't want to travel anymore because I want to work from home. So we all have to make our own choices. Mr. Houseman, what were you going to say?
All right. So another question. What about pillows and stuff like that people might be uncomfortable with?
Yeah, a couple things for us to think about. If we think about our baseline providers across the spectrum, so the Ecolabs, Diversities, P&G, we've got to remember that for those programs, what they provide for laundry is already kind of hospital grade from a sanitation perspective. So I think from that perspective, we're kind of good. And then kind of good news for the industry overall is that years ago, when most of us jumped into the clean white bed, right, where everything is washed for every guest, that was a discipline that was kind of instilled a number of years ago that certainly is going to pay forward in spades now, right, with the ability to deliver that. So again, I think there's no magic answer, but if you think about, we thought about cleaning from warewashing, what happens with China glass and silver laundry, and chemicals in the guest room. I think that's the most impactful, that's most guest facing. New journey, right? It's hard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Before we wrap up this segment, one other question I'm getting, and again, it's going to be one of those tricky kind of things that need balance. What if someone appears sick when they're coming into the hotel?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's an answer that I don't know the answer to, right? We've seen in other countries, right? And there's discussion here about, do you take somebody's temperature? How invasive can you be? Can you really ask? That's a tough one. We're just gonna have to figure that one out together.
Right. Yeah, I think from my perspective, from a travel perspective, I think at the airports, that's a little bit more understandable. People coming from internationally, whatever. I think if I go to the hotel and every single person's being tested, for a fever. And I don't know. I first I would love everybody to be tested, but on the other hand, I think it's intrusive, and we have a law here that you're not allowed to ask about people's medical history, and so yeah, I think that is a tough one. I wouldn't want to be in your position.
All right.
One more thought there. Clean versus clinical is something else that I use, right? We're in hospitality business, so we got to send a message of clean, but we're not the ultimate 200% all nailed down, right? So new journeys for all of us in hospitality, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry, Anthony.
And I appreciate that transparency. I appreciate, because I think that's going to help other brand leaders. I think it's going to help other managers, and it's going to help me understand you can only control the things you can control. This is an environment. This is a hotel. We are going to be 100% clean. We're going to do everything we can to our ability, 100%. However, there are a lot of things that move, and there's only certain things we can control. You, as a guest, have to make a decision. Are you comfortable traveling? Are you comfortable going to a restaurant? Are you comfortable going into a hotel room? That is something that I can't help you with. And I think that you're the first person I've spoken to in this journey that has been that clear and transparent, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh no, thank you. Remember, leaders are dealers in hope, all of us, right? So we gotta get our team members re-engaged. We gotta get our guests traveling again, and we'll get there.
Great. Any other final thoughts, Phil, before we let you go, sir?
No, I mean, this is a time for us hoteliers. It's more than ever to kind of focus on the basics and get our guests incented to come back to stay with us and make sure they're happy when they do. Long journey ahead, but we'll figure it out.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here and giving us your valuable time. We really appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Chance. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Anthony, I know you have to get going, but fortunately, we've got our great Cracker Jack panel behind the scenes, so I'm going to bring them back in. Yeah?
Before you bring them in, I'm going to say goodbye to them now. Guys, thank you so much for being here. But I just want to say something about Phil. When you're around a person like that, if he's a leader and you're working in Hilton, you just feel inspired. You feel like it's common sense leadership, and that's what we're looking for. So, Phil, thank you to your team for allowing you to be on our show. And just for everyone to understand, it's a big get when a guy like Phil comes on our show and really kind of talks from the heart and talks authentically. Truly appreciate it. And that's what I think, Glenn, what makes this show very unique and different than any other show out there. And that's why we're getting 100,000 downloads. So truly appreciate people like him that really make this show better and better every day. And with that said, my friend, I'm going to my webinar. So if you haven't signed up, go to hospitalitysuccess.com or go to my Facebook page, Hospitality Success. Sign up for the webinar. It's free. We're talking about post-COVID revenue management strategies with the one, the only, the legendary Jeremy Pinkerton. So I'm hopping over there now. And Glenn,
I'm going to continue this conversation. Please go watch that at 2. What a great show.
Can you handle it? Can you handle it?
No. I'm without training wheels once you're off the show, but I'm going to try to handle it. Anthony, have a great webinar. I'll see you on there at 2, and hope everyone joins him also. See you later, my friend. All right, let's bring back in our cavalcade of stars over here. All right, Del, Cindy, who else we got? We've got to get Ken in here as well. All right, Chris Green had to go. All right, so we just heard from Phil Cordell, the global head over at Hilton. I got to tell you, I love how he's getting out in front of all of this, and I love that he wasn't afraid to ask all the hard questions that we need to deal with right now. Brandon, first impressions of what he had to say, sir, as president of a management company with Hilton.
Yeah, it's always exciting to listen to Phil talk. He's got one of those personalities that gets you going. Enjoyed being able to hear him at conferences over the years. But as owners and operators of many Hilton properties, I'd have to say I'm pretty excited about what Hilton's rolled out. I was reading it as soon as they released it, and pretty good stuff. There's parts of it I'm really excited about, and I think the partnership that they've done with Lysol brand and RB, that this is gonna be great for our hotels and for our guests. I think as they learn about that, they're gonna feel that sense of security, and I love the idea of the seal on the door. When a guest walks up and they see that unbroken seal that's going to be placed on the door, it's kind of a sense of, okay, this room's ready for me.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So, Cindy, do you feel that this will create positive energy and might have a positive effect on the data that we're all hoping to see in the next couple of months?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential because, until sure there's testing and all these medical things, but people have to have personal comfort and security and confidence and trust that wherever they stay, whatever space they're in, that they're confident that they're not going to get sick. So I just don't know how hotels could recover without having this sort of system in place.
Excellent. Dale, what do you think about from the hotel operations point of view?
I think that there's going to be a lot of innovation. There is, as a result of this. Innovation is always born out of crisis. The key is, though, we have to remember that if it requires operational process changes, we have to be prepared to rewrite training and really focus on those things. Remember, we've had a hard time getting housekeepers to learn how to clean a coffee maker, right? Over the years. It's actually one of the things that tends to get neglected and is really difficult to do. And when they don't stay longer than a month, you have a few opportunities to go back and fix it. So
Right.
As we put new things in the room, as we change processes, as we add steps, we've got to make sure that the training and onboarding and the employee care side of this comes along with it. And that's really important. And the operational implications of that for owners and managers is actually pretty profound. People will not be able to come back from this market and pick up where they left off in terms of the way they run the business for their whole career. The old school is now giving way to the COVID school, and there is no going back.
Ken, that makes sense to you?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, just getting on the operation level, I think housekeeping's been a conversation and cleanliness has been a conversation for 5 years now. We talk about it every year. We talk about it, whether it's with scores, training. So, I think we're going to see a big change, and, I'm sure it's going to work out real well. Dell and I were just speaking about Dubai, and, as my time there, I mean, cleanliness is, out of this world over there. I mean, it's to tell you, I can't even imagine to begin to tell you about the cleanliness over there in the rooms. I think they take about 46 minutes a room. And when they have actually 3 inspectors inspect the same room.
Wow.
So can we afford that here? No, we can't afford that here.
No, funny you should say that because we got a comment on just that sort of thing. Well, they have an updated inspection sheet required on all of these requirements out there. But Dell, I'm getting questions in the audience addressed towards you. What do you think in regards to what Phil said about what's going into the room, what's coming out of the room, and what's your initial gut reaction to the the time to clean those rooms to get them up to the point where you can put that seal on the door with confidence?
Well, I actually really like the fact that the brands are becoming more sensitive to what goes into a room. I came from the brand side, as you know, and I will tell you that we never thought about things like the impact to clean time of every pillow. People don't know this, but it takes 45 seconds to a minute to change a pillowcase, and that's for a typical hotel. 1 minute of clean time adds $50,000 a year of labor costs to the hotel. So if we can get some stuff out of the room that isn't directly contributing to the guest stay, to the satisfaction, and frankly, now to this cleanliness challenge, if we can get some of that stuff out of there, that's going to be fantastic. And I actually think it can be done in a way that actually enhances the guest experience.
I agree. Brandon, so taking it to you, sir, it may take a little bit longer to clean the room, but we also had the conversation with maybe you're not cleaning that room as many times during an individual stay. How do you think about that part of it?
Yeah, I think that's, we're going to see that kind of a model. We have some extended stay brands from, Home2 Suites and things like that already kind of have a similar type process in place with the light touch and things like that. So yes, we're going to see that more cross over into other brands and other segments. And it's going to make a big difference. We use hotel effectiveness for all of our properties, and we're going to have to rewrite our standards. So I'm sure that they're already on top of they've come out with some great tools already. It's been great. Right away, we started getting new reports and things that helped us track our labor. And so I know they're working behind the scenes to help create additional tools that will benefit us as operators to manage our labor, because that is going to be key.
Nice. I love it. Look at you, Dell, getting all of these kudos on here. I love it. So, Cindy, I got to go back to you. We haven't heard from you in a while. What you got for us based on what these guys are saying over here?
Well, I think that getting back to business is going to be very challenging operationally. And I think that, as I said earlier, the need to be, we're not going to operate the way we did before. We're not going to look at revenue the way we did before. We're not going to look at operations the way we did before. Everything we're going to do is going to be different. And it isn't just going to be for a couple of years. I think this is permanently going to change the way we operate. But I think that's a really good thing, because I think we're going to get way smarter, way better, way more efficient. And those are all positive things. And I think we haven't had a pandemic in 100 years, but there's nothing saying that 10 years from now it may not happen again. We're going to be much better at handling this sort of thing in the future.
Bill Gates actually said we could expect this every 20 years. And him, through his foundation, has been very focused on the notion of a pandemic for a lot of years now. And he's got a lot of experts in there. So I tend to agree with that assessment that this is not the only time that this is going to happen. Our world has become so much smaller because of open borders, because of the ease of traveling and all of that kind of stuff. So we do have to prepare for more instances of this in the future. So I think we got to start winding down this show right now. We've been on for a long time. So Ken, how about giving us some final thoughts? What's your perspective? And, what else is on your mind, sir?
Well, I mean, I definitely see us coming back as an industry. I read a report from the Global Travel Association recently, and they're saying 33% of the hotels will be back in order once this thing ends in 3 months.
Yep.
And I really do. But I do think that we're not going to see that ADR increase that we were hoping for and bringing down the occupancy. I think it's going to be vice versa. I really do. I think we're going to have to fill up our rooms with our ADRs that were ranging probably 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. Where I just don't see those high ADRs anymore. And, unfortunately, the luxury brands are definitely going to take a hit. I think Marriott, with their all-inclusive they were thinking of coming out with, I think there might be a halt. And same thing, I don't think we're going to see more brands coming out anytime soon.
Well, I hope not. That'll definitely be the silver lining for all of this mess, if we could stop putting out all of those brands right now. In fact, I would argue there may be some more contraction in the marketplace with all of these brands. There's a lot of upstart brands out there that don't really have that name recognition, that don't really have that distribution, and I think that they may be absorbed by other brands. Cindy, you're the data pro over there. Am I saying something that makes sense, or am I silly?
No, I think we're going to have contraction of supply. We're going to have contraction of brands. I think my prediction is that there may be more of a move toward the soft brands as opposed to the traditional brands. I think there'll be potentially more independents that would be interested in the soft brand to get more support during difficult times. I think some of those that have been franchisees or have used the traditional brand may be thinking they don't want to bear all of that committed expense, and they want to do it, but they still want the connection and the affiliation. So I think that absolutely there just isn't the cost to maintain the infrastructure we had, 2 months ago. Like, those days are gone, and they will not come back for quite some time. I'm not saying they won't come back. It could be in 10 years. We tend to get amnesia about these things.
Yes, I agree with that assessment. 100%. I think 5 years from now, it'll be like none of this ever happened. Just like financial crisis, just like 9/11, just like the savings and loan crisis. We're resilient people. We're a great species when it comes to forgetting stuff too. Cindy, final thoughts from you.
Well, I think we have challenges ahead, as Ken pointed out. I mean, average rate is not going to be coming back because a lot of the business may be at the lower end of the spectrum. The larger groups or the corporate accounts, the bigger corporate accounts that might have paid more, will be later in coming back. So it will be challenging. However, as I said earlier in the program, people want to travel. There's a lot of pent-up demand. We are not going to get into virtual travel in any, sizable, meaningful way. So longer-term prospects, I think, are very strong. I think the contraction of supply will help those that remain. I think the focus on both operational and revenue-related techniques will help everybody operate more profitably. So even if the rate doesn't come back and the revenue is less, we may still be able to find the profit we're looking for just because we're going to be smarter in how we go about it. So I feel very optimistic, but I also know realistically we're talking, 3 to 5 years overall.
Yep. Del, what about your final thoughts, sir?
So we're going into this recovery phase. We're starting to plan for it. And the key to remember, it's been mentioned before, this is going to be a long process and a long slog. Think of it as a long distance race. And as we go into the race, there's going to be all kinds of requirements to be really creative about pursuit of occupancy and RevPAR. That's really, really important. That's where I lived for most of my hotel career. But as we do that, we cannot, the benefit of this period has to be a new focus on productivity, efficiency, and process. Otherwise, as we step up to this race, it's like we strap a parachute on our back that slows us down. So we have to work twice as hard to go slower than our competitors. We've got to take advantage of this. And I actually disagree that I think in 5 years, we are not the same industry. We should be a lot better because certainly on the revenue side, we'll be as strong as ever. But on the operating efficiency side, I think that the last vestiges of this ancient industry and some of the processes that we inherited over decades, I think they're going to all be gone. And I think we're going to be leaner, meaner, and actually be a better service provider to guests in ways that really matter.
Excellent. I freaking love that summary. Brandon, pressure's on, man. We got 3 great summary statements. It all comes down to you, sir.
I can't do any better than that, but yeah, I mean, we're all in this together. We're all looking at what's the future. Everybody's guessing, everybody is hoping. There's no real clear answers right now. There's, I think all the different data tells us different things, and but there are some consistencies that we can see, and but I think ultimately, to Dell's point, efficient operating efficiencies. There's no doubt that we are going to. This has kind of forced us to get over maybe a little hump in certain properties. Maybe we were struggling to get some efficiencies in place that we know we needed to, but we just couldn't quite get there. We're there now. And I was running some projections, on a couple of different properties this week. And it's pretty interesting to see how these new numbers are looking with regards to the operational expenses that we're seeing at properties. So it's going to be up to us, to try to maintain that. But we don't want to sacrifice service. So that's that we're in the service industry, so we have to provide that high level of service. But we'll figure ways. I think the brands are going to work with us, and they're going to allow us to do things that will help us operate efficiently while still allowing us to serve our guests.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for being here. Just stick around right there if you don't mind. And thanks to all of you out there listening today. What a great show this has been. I mean, Phil just came on, and I love how open and honest he was with us today. I love that some of the major brands are finally coming around and joining us here. And for those of you brands that haven't yet come on the show, this is a place of love. This is a place of openness. This is a place for you to win the hearts and minds of your franchisees. So don't be shy. Come on board. Come with us. We're here to give you some love. And if you guys out there haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, what are you thinking? Text the word hotel to 66866. That's the word hotel to 66866. Join our community. Join this revolution. We're here to help you guys in the future. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate the love and support that we've been getting over here. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow with another amazing show at 12 Eastern Daylight Time. So thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Del. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Anthony. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Have a great afternoon.